Hello, everyone. This is Paula Guthrie from Creating Purpose with Pau, and I welcome you to the Spanglish World Network and her network on Single TV channels 250 and 251. Please remember to download Single TV app on the respective app stores. The app is totally free, and you can find Single TV in Google Chromecast, on Amazon Fire TV Stick, Roku Stick, and all smart TVs from 2016 and forward. Welcome to everyone. Thank you for tuning in. And today we have a very special guest. She is Dr. Loretta Breuning, the author of many neuroscience books, just like the one that I have right here. She wrote, I have a list of all of her beautiful books. She wrote Habits of Happy Brain. She wrote Why Are You Unhappy? Biology versus Politics. She wrote Tame Your Anxiety, 14 Days to Sustain Happiness, and many more. Welcome to the show, and thank you for being here today. Sent you a big hug.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Please share with us why neuroscience? What guided you to study neuroscience?
Uh, Neuroscience isn't exactly my field. So I studied brain science from many different perspectives, but what I'm doing is not what is officially taught in a neuroscience program because I studied long ago. And since then, I noticed that a lot of what was taught in academic psychology was not working for me in my life. So I looked and looked for more information, and I found that animals have very similar emotional chemicals to humans, and they're controlled by very similar brain structures. This is like 50-year-old biology. This is not like fMRI, but it was completely ignored. And as I delved into that, I learned about the behaviors that you see in animals in response to each of the chemicals that we humans hear about all the time. And I saw that, wow, those are the same behaviors that we humans struggle to control all the time. So that's how I knew that this was the right way for me to understand my emotions and everyone around me.
And you went on a trip around the world. What did you learn when you, when you said, I'm going to go and figure things out on my own?
Well, I've already traveled a lot because that's my personal addiction. So I this was just a trip to celebrate my birthday, a big birthday, and I went to visit family on the East Coast, and then went to India from the East Coast, and then came home from India the other way. So what I learned in a way, it was really miraculous that everything worked. You know how like you hear nothing but bad things in the news, but the whole world ran like clockwork, like it's sort of a miracle that I could go to all these different places and just touch things on a screen, and then you're just delivered to the next place, and you get an Uber, and you get a map, and you talk to people, and the world is really so well organized compared to what you would feel if you just watch the news.
Wow. And tell us tell us how to begin to develop those habits that will allow us to develop a happy brain.
Sure. So, first, we want to understand that our brain is not designed to release happy chemicals all the time. These chemicals have a very specific job and are only released in short spurts when you're meeting a specific need. So, you don't need to think that other people are getting them all the time and something is wrong with you because they're only meant to be on in short spurts. So, the chemicals I talk about in my work are dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, and endorphin. And each of them is released for a very specific purpose to meet a very specific need. And when you understand what that is, then you can find a healthy way to do it rather than the unhealthy ways that we often learn in the past because they work so fast.
And could you share with us? Okay, so first of all, let's start with a dopamine. And dopamine, from my understanding, is our happy hormone.
So yeah, there are four happy hormones that I talk about. Dopamine is the most basic one because it's your brain signal that you've met a survival need. So if you imagine our ancient ancestors had to look for food all the time, and when they found food, dopamine turned on and they were like, wow, that's great. I can live another day. But in the modern world, when it's so easy to find food, it's harder for us to spark that feeling of, wow, I just found a new way to survive. So that's why, as much as we would like that excitement of dopamine all the time, it's not meant to be on all the time, and especially when our needs are already met. So some people try to get it by playing a video game, and other people try to get it by eating a second snack after they just had the first snack, because these are all things that have worked in the past, but they're not really good for you in the long run. So the way I explain it is set a goal, because each step toward a goal um, triggers a little bit of dopamine. And it's really because you have connected the goal in your mind to meeting your needs. And you don't want to make some goal that's so big that you'll never reach it. And you don't want to make a goal that's so small that it doesn't excite you, but have a medium sized goal. And you need to know that the dopamine will stop as soon as you reach it. So you need to set another goal and another and another.
And that's how we grow, right? We get better and better each day.
Mm.
And I think that's our purpose in life, like, how can I get better each day?
Yes. Yes.
Yes, beautiful. Uh, Now, what about our serotonin, like our proud hormone? What are good ways for us to begin to practice those habits that would allow our brain to release, those drops of honey, of serotonin, that will allow us, to feel satisfied with our growth?
Sure. So thank you for calling it the proud hormone. I haven't done that before, but that's perfect. That's very good. So it would be nice if we had this good feeling all the time. But again, it's not designed to be on all the time, because in the animal world, serotonin is that feeling that I'm in the position of strength. And if you think that all the time, you might be a jerk and you might get into fights that you would lose. So your brain is designed to only release serotonin in those moments when it would be appropriate to assert yourself. But because we want to have it all the time, then just thinking about your own strength, which you call pride, is like feeling I'm strong enough to meet my needs, even in a world of other strong people. I don't have to feel weak and helpless. I can take pride in my own strength. And it's not easy to do that, which is why, just like you said, is like building your strength every day. And then you get a little bit of serotonin if you do it.
Yes. And now let's talk about the loving hormone, the oxytocin.
Great. So we often hear that hugging is the way to get oxytocin. But if you hug someone you don't like, you notice that you don't really get it. So what your brain is really looking for is protection. And it doesn't sound nice, because we like to think of oxytocin as this um, uh, empathy and community. But in reality, you could see how I want protection from like I want other people to protect me, and other people want me to protect them. So that's why in the human world, we have a sort of a negotiation that builds trust over time. And that's really a good habit for oxytocin, is knowing that it's not meant to flow all the time for no reason. But when you create trust with someone else and then you feel safe with them, then you get a little bit for that moment. But you're not meant to feel safe all the time with everybody, because that just wouldn't be good for your survival.
Yeah. So you dive into trust in one of your books, and you mention that we are. I made a note that we are, like, socially, like, we crave that socially connection, in sometimes because we've been betrayed before. we stop that trust, we stop the flow of oxytocin, and you teach us, how to gain it back, because you said it's good to trust. You don't have to trust, every single thing they say to you, but you advise us to open the opportunity, the possibility to begin to trust again. Tell us the benefits, please.
Sure. So first we need to know that these chemicals are controlled by neural pathways built from past experience. And when you have a bad experience, that's a bad feeling chemical. And that chemical is very good at building connections in your brain because that's its job, to warn you, like, oh, don't do that again. So you could see how people can easily end up not trusting anyone. And if you want to understand what is the benefit of, you ask, of trust, let's think of an animal example. So if I'm a gazelle and I'm hungry and I want to eat, so I put my head down to eat the grass, but now I can't see predators. And now I'm scared. It's dangerous. So I look around for predators and I'm so busy looking, now I can't eat. So trust is when you're with a group and you're trusting them to alert for you so then you can eat. Okay? But we have to remember that that's basically selfish. Is like, I want you to stay on alert so that I am safe to eat. So no one likes to see that their own selfish motives. So we think other people are selfish and because they should be protecting us and they didn't. So we have to understand that it's reciprocal and we are trying to meet our survival needs while the other person is trying to meet theirs. But there's these moments when we can work together and I can trust you and you can trust me because we're both trying to move toward the same goal.
Okay. Beautiful. I mean, it's beautiful because we all have sometimes the mechanism of, like, defense mechanism, to be like, oh, this person betrayed me, or you don't feel safe because your brain is trying to keep you alive, so it's like danger, danger, danger. uh but it's good to get back into the field and create connections, right? It's like, that's what we're here for. And that is.
But we need to have realistic expectations about connection because often we're given the idea, like you walk down the street and you see a restaurant full of people and you think all those people are having like these heartwarming conversations and everything they say, everybody else supports and agrees with. But then if you get to the reality of each table, if you could hear, everybody has the same frustrations because we're all unique. And that's why we get frustrated. So it's important to know that we're all unique because animals are wired by genetics, but humans, we're born with a lot of neurons, but they're not connected. So we connect them with experience, and each person's experience is unique. And that's why we're all different. And we all think, I know the right way to feel good and I know the right way to live. And then the other person thinks they know the right way. So that's why it's hard to have connection.
Oh, that's beautiful. We'll come back to that connection for our parents, especially those who have little ones, the importance of the experience for those young babies. Now, we talked about oxytocin, we talked about dopamine and serotonin. Now, let's dive into the endorphins. How can we generate those endorphins?
Well, the problem is that endorphin is actually the body's natural opioid. The word comes from endogenous morphine, and it's released when you're injured. And you're not meant to have it all the time, but only when you're injured because it masks pain. And in the nature world, we need that so we can run when we're injured so that we can save ourselves. But that's the purpose of it. It's only for emergencies. So people want it anyway. So sometimes people do things that are harmful to themselves in order to get it. And that's why I try to emphasize that we're not meant to chase it, that we're meant to chase the other chemicals, but not chase endorphin. However, we can get a little bit from laughing. And so you can laugh as often as you want and keep sparking a little bit more. And we also get a little bit from hot pepper and a hot tub because they cause a little bit of pain. But again, you might be like tempted to get more and more. The same with exercise, like people are tempted to get more and more to get a high, and then you end up injuring yourself. So we should not be chasing an endorphin high.
Okay, thank you. So these are the four uh,
Mm.
hormones our beautiful brain releases in small amounts. They don't have to be released at all at all times, but in small drops. I call them drops of honey. It's like,
That's
yes,
good.
drops of
Yeah.
honey. So now let's go back to connect, like our brain creates connections based on our experience. And I teach high school, and I tell my students, it's science. So it's like they're like, come on, guys. It's like I'm just here to give you material to create those, brain connections. So whenever you go to college, you'll already have a path. It'll be easier for you. So
Yes.
I try to engage,
Yes.
get their attention, talking to them about brain health, how important it is to create those brain connections. Like right now, it might not matter, but in the future, it will. It'll save you if you have to take
Well, no,
a class.
it matters now too, actually. So, what kind of connections do you want? So, a lot of people, when they talk about brain health and they have this food or that food or exercise, but no, the kind of connections you're looking for is confidence in your own skill. So, if I am studying for a test and I tell myself, oh, the last time I studied for a test, it didn't make a difference and I failed. So I would rather be out with my friends. Then you're just going to release cortisol, the bad feeling chemical, and you're not going to learn. So what you want is positive expectation is my actions are likely to bring success. And each time I study, I learn a little bit more. And that builds a pathway. And then when you have positive expectations about studying, you actually feel good about studying. And then you're more likely to do it. So then you get more good results, then you get more good feelings, and it's a positive cycle.
Yes, thank you for saying this, connections with the experience, because I'll try to explain this to our beautiful audience tonight. Because the way I understood it from your book is that as we grow up and we gain this experience from home, okay, since the moment we're born, our brain begins to acquire experience. So our brain builds pathways. Let's imagine roads, right? And they become habits. And if those habits are not serving us as right now as an adult, your brain health material, it's helping us to choose new highways. Like we can build new highways. Like if, for instance, as a mom, if when my kids yelled, if my first road to take is frustration, you know, and I'm choosing not to go through that path anymore because I'm growing and I would like to, be a better mother, then we would use new habits to build the dopamine, to build the serotonin, to build the oxytocin whenever, that what the trigger begins, right? And then it's like create that new path from my brain all the way through my body, that it would be a positive habit. Now, could you please explain that in your own words, how this could be possible for any moms out there that might feel that frustration when kids are not doing their homework, or they might not be listening, or not taking a bath, at the right time?
Great. Yeah. Well, you said it very well. So here's the idea. Nobody is consciously choosing to use an old pathway, but we use our old pathways because they're so big. And the reason they're so big is because we use them so often that each time you use a path, it gets bigger and bigger. Now, the electricity in your brain, it flows like water. So water flows into the biggest path. So without consciously choosing it, you're just flowing into that old behavior. Now, how did that old behavior get there in the first place? So we have something called mirror neurons. So when you were young, if you had a parent that got very upset, then you were surrounded by that experience of agitation. Just like, if you were an animal and a lion was always chasing you, you would build a big pathway to feel like a lion is chasing you. And that's what you get when you're a child around adults who are very agitated. So that builds a big pathway. And then in the future, when you have a frustration, it immediately feels like a big agitation because that's the pathway you have. So you need to tell yourself, I have billions of other neurons to have a different reaction, but I'm not using them because the electricity in my brain doesn't like to flow into a tiny little straw when instead it wants to flow into a big river. So it takes a lot of careful, conscious effort to, and that's why, when you try to have a new reaction, it takes conscious effort. But if you do that conscious effort over and over, then the new pathway gets bigger and bigger and it starts to feel like your new normal, and then it doesn't take so much work.
Yes, and it's like you were saying, it flows. It flows to the path of least resistance. That's what you said on your book. So it's like, and it's true because that's kind of like our emotional home. We have conditioned to go to that behavior because I feel safe in a way, right?
Yes,
And if we
exactly.
continue to do that, but our results are not what we want, so her book is a beautiful book for you all to begin to read, to rewire our brain to default to our best behavior. And like Dr. Doretis is telling us today, those connections gets done through the experience. So the more we experience the dopamine, the more we experience the serotonin when we're with our kids or with our husband, whatever area of your life that you want to improve, then we are on the right path. We are building those new highways that whenever we get triggered, then we have a split of a second to think, okay, do I want to go to the dirt road I've been driving all these years, or do I want to drive on the new highway that I am building towards a more beautiful life?
Can I say it slightly different? Okay.
Yes, yes, please.
The So your old reaction is like a big highway, and that's why it's so tempting because it's such a big highway. Your new response is just a little dirt path, and that's why it's so hard to take it. And that's why, like, when you're upset with something, it seems like, well, I have to get upset. I have no choice. But you do have a choice, but the choice is so tiny that you don't even notice it. And then once you do it, you're like, okay, I'm not going to get upset about that. So then it takes a few times. The first time you're like, that's weird. I should get upset. So I give you a lot of little tricks. Is when you have your new reaction that you want to have, give yourself a reward, because then the positive feeling of the reward connects to the new behavior, and then you feel good about it rather than bad about it. And then some people would get in the habit of like rewarding themselves too much. So I help you think about healthy rewards.
Yes, and please talk to us, what are some examples of, like, first of all, the importance of rewards. Like, your book also helped me, like, oh wow, it is important. It is important to look for the good things that I accomplish through the day. It's like, oh yeah, I took the trash out. Just simple things, like it doesn't have to be that uh, you know, that I score a 100 on my class or something like that. It can be small, but make sure that I'm patting myself in the back.
Yes, exactly. Because I have a different book called The Science of Positivity. So if you take the trash out and you say negative things to yourself, like, oh, my life is so awful. Why am I the one that has to take out the trash? Or if you say, I never get anything done. But I've never done enough. But then if you think, oh, I got this done and this done and this done, then you make a new pathway so you don't always have that feeling of I never get anything done.
Or I have to do it all by myself. Sometimes those moms like,
Yeah,
ah,
whatever. Yeah.
yeah.
And each person has to find that, like, what is that old thing you're telling yourself? And then say, what is a new way to think about that same thing that could make you happier? And then how can you repeat it? And then how you can reward yourself for repeating it. And you asked about rewards. So I explain that if you've ever been in a dog training class, you see that dogs learn from rewards. And I've been to a lot of animal training classes, and it's so amazing because the animal doesn't consciously understand the trick that you're trying to teach it. So you just give it a tiny reward when it takes little steps. And because it's so eager to get the reward, it keeps taking the steps. And finally, it learns the new behavior. And we can all do that to ourselves.
Okay. What about our children? What are good ideas to create those experiences? Like on your book, you talked about how you wanted to improve the childhood that you had. You didn't want to follow the same pathways that you live with mom, but you wanted, something more for your kids. Could you talk to us a little bit? Can you inspire us as moms how to let go of those old habits that maybe we might still dragging from our childhood, and how can we better, the life of our kids?
Sure. So, first, I have to say that all of this information I learned after my kids grew up. And I wish I knew it when they were young. And that's why I'm so happy to share it with people whose kids are young. So what I did was I didn't want to be like the anger and anxiety that I grew up around. I went to the other extreme, like, I'm not going to get upset about it. I'm not going to get upset about it. I'm not going to get upset about it. But that means that my children got upset about things because that's the natural animal brain. And I didn't realize that. So if they just got upset about things and I didn't respond, then that made it, they didn't learn another way, another response to get instead of getting upset about things. A simple example, if your child, if I would sit with my children when they did their homework, and one of them would always cry when she would do her homework. So I would drop everything and stay with her. And so that gave her unlimited power just by crying. And then what happens, her brain got wired, like whenever she tries to do her homework, she starts to cry. It's not a conscious response. It's just like a dog learning to do tricks. And that anxiety gets in the way of learning.
So that helped her, like she don't cry anymore.
Uh, no, so it wasn't. So that's why I started researching, what was wrong with this idea that I had been trained with, which was children know better. Just let them follow their own impulses and don't try to direct them. So that wasn't working, and I didn't know why. So then I learned about the animal brain. So animals are very competitive with each other. Like people sometimes watch like two dogs or two birds, or, one of them will, two toddlers. So they'll conflict. And so if they get a good response when they try to dominate another, then they'll do it again and again. So you need to show that that's not a good behavior, but without screaming at them, without crying, without getting angry. So you explain that there's another way, and then you give them repetition to learn the new behavior because their old bad behaviors are deeply wired in just like ours.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Give them time, just like we need time to create those new connections based on those experiences.
Yes.
So that's yes. Uh, you also talked about, it says redirecting your circuit. And it goes back to probably the split of a second that you get to choose, but you also says that it goes with repetition and emotion. Could you please explain those two?
Sure. So there are three ways to build connection in your brain. So one is just by being young. The young brain has a lot of this paving material that builds new roads in your brain. So a young person builds new circuits quickly. Um, After that, repetition builds new circuits. Now, emotion builds new circuits in the sense that if you think about some great moment in your past, and then anything associated with that great moment, and you feel good. Like, for example, if you see the dress that you wore on your graduation day, and then you feel the pride of your graduation just by looking at the dress. So, our brain connects everything that's going on in the moment of emotion. So, we connect sometimes like strange things to it. And like sometimes I'm listening to an audiobook while I'm driving past a certain street. And then the next time I'm on that street, I think about that sentence from the audiobook. So, like, it's our brain just connects everything that's going on in that moment. And uh, if something great happens, a good feeling makes it easier to learn something. If something bad happens, a bad feeling makes it easier to learn something because you say, I'm never going to do that again. Like if you see a place where something bad happened to you, it's like, oh, I'm going to drive on a different street. Um, but if we relied on emotion to teach us everything, then we would only learn things that happen from the random chance of emotion. And that's mostly what we do. And that's why we end up like maybe eating too much food when we feel bad or looking to food to feel good or something. It's just examples. So that's why it's so important to know that you don't have to just rely on those circuits. You can build new circuits, but it takes a lot of repetition if that's the tool you're using.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I believe, and as a mom, sometimes I do think, okay, what are those magic moments that I need to be creating for my kids? But that's from my point of view, right? I mean, it's like I can control their emotions. So,
Exactly.
yeah. And you also talked about music.
Mm.
Sometimes music takes you back to that emotion you had with, I think you were talking about your
Yes.
brother.
Oh, remind me which one or which
We're
book.
talking about happy habits of a happy brain, and you
Okay.
talked about, like, how
Huh.
music also allow us to create those emotions at times. And I believe you mentioned, I remember your brother for some reason. You think of your brother
Huh.
and the music that he used to play, even though you did not choose that music. It's just like it comes
Oh.
back.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That
Because it was playing at the
at the
time.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I I didn't have yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't remember.
No,
I'll
no,
have to
you're
go look that up.
good. Yeah, no, I guess I'm guessing when you write, you just write and it comes to you. You don't have to remember everything. But I thought, because I play music for my students, and my the outcome that I want is for them to get a good association with learning in music.
Huh.
Kind of like when you walk into the cafe and you feel really good, just the smell of coffee and then the background music. So I tried to give them
Mm.
that experience so that they feel, you know, they have a good attitude when they're in my classroom. So I use music,
Mm.
and you mentioned music as well. So
Yeah, yeah. I think in my case it was like I don't really like that music, but because when it's triggered, then I easily can access other things that were going on in that time period because the electricity in my brain is sent to that area, you know.
yeah, it's beautiful. You go back sometimes to remember those magic moments that we created. Tell us about your
Can I just ask you,
yeah.
excuse me, you said you wanted to create these magic moments for your kids. And then, of course, you can't control their emotions. Um, so they learn a lot from your emotions. So if you're excited about something, they get the idea, oh, this is something worthwhile and enjoyable. And like, years from now, you may find that they're like I was just telling the example when I was young, Indian food was not very available. So I got so excited when I found it. So my kids grew up like Indian food was everywhere and we had it all the time. But to me, it was such a rare thing that I was excited about it. So my kids learned that it was something to be excited about.
That's
Just an example.
no, and thank you,
Mhm.
because our parents who are here watching us, sometimes guilt, takes over us and we worry. But you're reminding us that the way we behave, we're modeling to our kids. The way we react, we're
Exactly.
modeling to our
Yeah.
kids. Uh, we care and we worry. We want to pass down the goodness, right, to the next generation, and sometimes we don't know how.
Well, yeah, and if you worry too much, then what the kids' mirror neurons are going to say, I'm a problem. I'm a source of worry. I have bad skills. I'm not capable of taking care of myself. That's what the child learns from your worry.
Wow, thank you for sharing this information, because yeah, it's true. If we model that worry, that's what they're going, somehow they're going the brain makes sense somehow, and sometimes it's silly, right? Now that we become an adult, and I was like, oh, I associated that with this and it does not make sense. So yeah, it's good to model for our beautiful kids. Tell us about your institute, your Mammal Institute, so that our beautiful audience begins to become familiar and maybe they want to take a peek at your website.
Yes. So, innermammalinstitute.org, my website has a free 5-day happy chemical jumpstart where a person can put their email and they'll get one message a day for 5 days explaining each of the chemicals very simply. And then it has information about my books. And if you don't like to read books, there are videos and podcasts and infographics, and there's a special page for parents, and there's another page for anxiety, for addiction recovery, and for career.
What inspired you, Dr. Loretta, to study, to deliver to your audience this beautiful content?
Thank you. Well, first, I could give you a nice intellectual answer, and then I could give you a deeper answer. So, what inspires me is that I don't agree with a lot of the information that I hear around about mental health. I think a lot of it just reinforces that feeling that the world is awful and that you don't have the skills to make yourself happy. And I think that's too bad because I remember when I was in that mess as a young working mom, and so I was so happy when I found this information, and it made so much sense to me that I want everyone else to know it. So that's the intellectual answer. But I think that really we are not motivated by intellect, even though we give these nice answers, that we always have a deeper emotional motivation. So when I was a kid, I was not really free to say what I thought a lot of the time. Mostly I had to shut up. And so when I was in my career, I had to also hold my tongue very often. And when I was a parent, I had to hold my tongue. So I think now I'm having the pleasure of saying something that I think is true rather than just saying what I think is expected.
That is beautiful. And I appreciate it, because if you all have time, please dive into her website. There's tons of podcasts, videos, resources. Like you talk about, is like mental health and even about parenting. Because I know as a parent, you can also go through through a moment of mental health where you feel guilty, where you feel, like ashamed because you think you're not the best parent that you should be because your kids are not in singing lessons, piano lessons, dancing lessons, or playing sports. So it's good to dive into this beautiful information to keep our brain healthy and to figure out, it's like our basic question is like, what do you want? It's like, what do you want? And then from there, we build our pathways. I believe that it's just a simple question. What do you want?
Very good. Did you study NLP? Because they always use that.
And neuroencoding with uh, Dr. Joseph McClendon III. He's a neuroscientist, and
Oh,
I love his
okay.
psychology.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, they always start with what do you want? Because then you have the good feeling of moving towards something you want, which is a positive expectation, which releases a positive chemical rather than, oh gosh, I have to do something I don't want to do and maybe I'll fail.
Yes, exactly. Yes. And it's like, well, what do you want out of the whole mess? Simple question. What do you want? And then you begin working towards the outcome goal. So, yes. Tell us about your kids. What do they think about? Did they adopt your study method now and then?
Well, I don't really think I have permission to talk about my kids in
Okay.
public. Um, but I would say that I don't think people like to have a mother who talks about how your feelings work.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes,
Um,
yes. I'm,
I'm,
and I ask you because, I see my kids, like the youngest one, which, she's 6 years old today, was what do you want to be when you grow up? And she wore one of my sweaters because she just wanted to be like mom when she grows up. So, like you have
oh,
model for them. That's the only reason why I asked, because it matters, what we
yeah.
do, it matters. Uh,
It's people are very contrary. So when they had take your daughter to work day, my daughter refused to go. So I think because I had taken her to work before and she knew that maybe she would have to keep quiet in my classes. So maybe she didn't want to go. I don't know, but people often want the opposite. Whatever they have, they want the opposite.
no one else.
But I'm thrilled that my kids have given me some beautiful grandchildren.
Oh, that's beautiful. It is, and that was in my mind today. To be honest, as I was getting ready for for this interview, I was thinking about kids. I was thinking about the parenting, and it came to me where it's like, oh wow, it's like we worry so much, probably because we want to pass down the goodness, so that they can be good to the next generation and so on. I think that's the bottom line. That's what we get afraid, and and we overreact and we allow that frustration, sometimes the path of frustration, to guide our emotions, because deep down we just want our kids to be good. We want to pass down the goodness so that they can be good to others.
Well, deep down, actually, we should explain that our brain was created to feel good about its own survival. And part of your survival is making children who survive, who produce children who survive, who produce children who survive. That's what makes us happy, even though we're not consciously thinking that. Because look at animals, they don't consciously know what genes are, but they put all their energy into making babies and keeping them alive. So when you do things that are related to keeping your genes alive, keeping your culture alive, that's what triggers your happy chemicals because that's how our brain was created.
Oh, that's beautiful. And you used to do, or sometimes you do zoo trips, and you explain mammals, the behavior of the mammals, to the group of students who is learning this concept, right?
Yes, I do that because, well, first I watched a lot of nature videos. And I was amazed because all of the things that I said to you before about the conflict between animals and things is all told in nature videos, even though it's not talked about in academic psychology today. So that's why I used zoo tours as a fun way to learn about it. However, zoos have gotten very expensive, and zoo animals, you don't really see the behavior in action the way you do in a nature video because zoo animals are having their needs met for them rather than having to meet their own needs the way they would in the state of nature. So I highly recommend that people watch nature videos to understand these powerful impulses that we're all working so hard to manage.
Beautiful. Yes, we are working hard to manage. This power, like one of the things that I learned from your book, or relearn, one of the two, is that sometimes in order for us to keep our membership in this world, we agree with other people just because we want to, the need of belonging, right? It's like I'll lie, I might not agree with you, but I'll go with the flow because you mentioned it, like the membership of this world. You just want to belong. And you said it really beautifully, whereas like you don't have to follow that path because then you're not really living your life. And it's okay to be have your own thoughts. It's okay to step outside of the box and begin to rewire, your brain in a different way, in a way with more purpose.
Yeah, so, but I'm not saying that you should be different because, a lot of people, they just make being different as an end in itself. So the idea is to know that you don't have to belong every minute. So you can go back and forth. So 1 minute I'm going to do my own thing, and 1 minute I'm going to be with a group. And it's fascinating to me to know that this is what animals do. They do not stick with the group every minute because if they did, they would end up eating food that has been soiled by others, and that gives them intestinal worms and kills them. So they actually are always trying to spread out. And then when they feel unsafe, then they cluster into the group. And then they spread out again. And then they cluster again. So we can think that we're always choosing in this moment, I might want to follow. And in this moment, I don't want to follow.
Okay. Yeah, it is beautifully said. And it gives you that sense of finding your own voice.
Yeah, 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 exactly.
Is finding your own voice. Did you have a last minute message? I mean, I appreciate your time and all the beautiful wisdom that you're sharing with us today. I so appreciate your time. And do you have a last minute message?
Yes, thank you. I always like to make sure I talk about social comparison because even animals are constantly doing the social comparison dance. So, in the animal world, if you are stronger, you grab the banana. In the animal world, if you're weaker and you grab the banana, the stronger animal is going to bite you. So you don't grab for that banana. So we're always going through the world comparing ourselves to others. And if we feel strong, then a good feeling is released. If we feel weak, then a lot of people go around saying, "Oh, I'm never going to get the banana. Everybody else takes my bananas. It's so unfair." And then they just make themselves feel bad. So you can't just go around being a jerk and grabbing everyone else's bananas, but you need to feel that you have the strength in a world of social comparison that you can meet your own survival needs.
That is beautiful. Yes, and I would love to invite our beautiful audience to read your books because they're amazing. I'm reading. I'm on my second one right now, and what's funny, Dr. Loretta, is like before we met or I heard about you or you heard about me, I already read that book last summer, and I was like, oh, I read this book already, Habits of a Happy Brain. So, it's
Okay.
like now I'm gonna read this one. I
Oh,
I
good.
can't
Thank
wait.
you.
So thank you so much for being here. She'll be here with us tomorrow in Spanish, so I'm excited.
Yay! Yeah, me too. Great.
So
Good, good.
thank you to our beautiful audience. You can watch this replay on my YouTube channel, Paola Guthrie. This show can also be heard in Spanglish Radio Network. Please check out spanglishworld.ca for all news and programming. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Blessings, blessings, and we'll see you soon. And I guess we're still live.
Okay.
Oh,
I should tell, can I tell you that my grandson speaks Spanglish, and
oh,
it's so fun because he's learning both languages about equally, but when he says something, when he speaks English, he says it with Spanish grammar. So I understand what he's saying because I speak Spanish, so I know what it means. But you could think that if you translated Spanish into English literally word for word, of course that's what a toddler would do at first, So it's very fun.
oh, that's adorable. That is adorable. I bet you have fun with your grandkids.
I do. It's a pleasure, but they're far away, so I don't see them that
Very
much.
much.
So,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
And here we go. I tell our beautiful audience, that life is always changing. Right now I still have all of my kids at home, but whenever they begin to leave, I'm gonna have to learn to rewire my brain to adapt, to the new change. And I want to do it and have happy habits. I want a happy brain. So
Yes, exactly. And that's another answer, when you said, why do I do what I do? It's like, well, I'm going to feel good by doing something that's available to me rather than just mourning something that's not available to me. So I keep finding more things that are available.
that's beautiful. And I don't know. Last time we were here for a long time, Eduardo, our beautiful producer, had electrical problems at home. There was a storm in Toronto. So
Oh,
I'm
that's
wondering if he lost power. So I'm gonna message him real quick because I want to honor your time. Uh,
I'm going to shut the door.
but hey, we're here. You all can hang out with us for a little bit. But usually the show lasts, 50 minutes. But sometimes when our awesome producer that is in Toronto has electrical issues because of snowstorms, then we just continue. I guess it hasn't happened very often, but something probably happened.
Okay, so we continue?
We can continue, or if I want to honor your time. I so appreciate you. We can also click leave, and then he takes care of that too.
Okay, well, you choose. Do you have more questions?
Well, yeah, you can dive a little bit into like what is like biology versus politics.
Great. Okay. So the book is called Why You're Unhappy: Biology versus Politics. So I define politics as the natural urge to say what is popular to make yourself more popular because people are politicking all the time. So it's popular to tell people that you should be happy. You deserve to be happy. You can be happy easily if you just do this, whatever this is, and you offer them some fast, easy way to be happy. But that's not biologically true because when I explain the happy chemicals, you can see why they're not designed to be on all the time. And it's rather difficult to do things that turn them on. And when you do one thing that turns on one chemical, then you may lose another chemical. Like when you're following the group, you're not going toward greener pastures. So you may be getting more oxytocin and less dopamine, or vice versa. So, it's it's natural to be unhappy. That's the normal state. And then we get little moments of happiness, and then our brain easily goes into unhappy because it's so good at finding threats. So it takes hard work to steer your brain from a threatened feeling back to a happy feeling. And because that's so hard, we often try to do it with fast, easy tricks, like ordering a pizza or worse things. So,
So
so that's what.
no, I was going to ask, would you make time in your schedule to talk about this book in the future, next month or so?
Yes, sure,
Okay.
that would be great. Okay.
Okay. Awesome. Well, this time we are leaving, and I thank you all very much for being here, and we'll see you soon then. Thank you.
Okay.
Blessings.
Bye bye.
Bye.